Imagine this: you're walking through life, making what you think are your own decisions, choosing your path, setting goals, and striving for success. But what if I told you that something deeper, something you may not even be aware of, is subtly influencing every choice you make? What if your philosophy of life and the motivation you think is driving you forward are actually shaping your decisions in ways you haven't fully realized? In this journey, we're not just scratching the surface. We're diving deep, uncovering the unseen forces, the silent truths, and the profound wisdom that sit at the heart of why you do what you do. And if you're willing to stay, this journey could completely transform the way you see yourself and the world. Let's begin. We all have a philosophy of life, even if we don't consciously articulate it. It's that invisible framework that tells us what matters, what doesn't, what we should strive for, and what we should strive for, and what we should avoid. It's the reason you wake up in the morning, the reason you push through discomfort, and the reason you pursue certain goals over others. But here's the catch: most of us never stop to question where this philosophy comes from. Is it really ours? Or have we unknowingly inherited it from society, culture, or even the subconscious influence of others?
Click subscribe to this channel to get more profound insights.
This is where the first sign comes in. Your choices subtly reflect the values you've absorbed, not necessarily the ones you've chosen. Think about it. Why do you want the things you want? Is it because they resonate deeply with your soul, or because the world around you has planted the idea that this is what success looks like, or this is what happiness feels like? Here's a deep question to consider: if all external influences were stripped away, no advertisements, no cultural norms, no societal expectations, what would you truly want? Would your goals remain the same? Would your definition of success still look the way it does now? Pause for a moment and really let that sink in. Because the truth is, many of us are chasing things that aren't even aligned with our true selves. Now let's move deeper. The second sign is this: motivation, while it feels empowering, often disguises fear. We love to talk about motivation as though it's the fuel to our fire. We wake up, we watch videos, we read quotes, and we get pumped up. But have you ever stopped to ask, what's beneath my motivation? Why am I so driven to achieve? Here's where it gets profound. For many of us, motivation isn't just about inspiration, it's about escaping something. Maybe it's the fear of failure. Maybe it's the fear of not being enough. Maybe it's the fear of being forgotten. We're motivated to succeed because we're terrified of falling short. So here's the challenge: can you allow yourself to feel that fear without letting it control you? Can you strip away the layers of motivation and simply act not from a place of fear, but from a place of pure joy, pure passion, and pure alignment with your inner truth? Imagine how liberating that would feel, to act not because you're running from something, but because you're moving towards something that truly matters to you. The third sign is a subtle one, but it's powerful. You feel trapped by your own goals. Think about it. Have you ever set a goal, achieved it, and then realized it didn't bring the fulfillment you thought it would? Or worse, have you ever felt like the goals you set have become shackles, locking you into a version of yourself that no longer feels authentic? This happens because we often confuse the pursuit of a goal with the pursuit of happiness. But here's the truth: goals are just tools. They're not the destination. They're meant to guide us, to give us direction, but they're never meant to define us. When we let our goals control us, we lose sight of the fact that life is fluid. It's okay to change your direction. It's okay to evolve. Here's a profound exercise for you. Take a moment to reflect on your current goals. Are they still aligned with who you are today, or are they remnants of who you used to be? And if they no longer resonate, do you have the courage to let them go and create new ones? The fourth sign is this: you're constantly seeking external validation. This one is tough because it's so ingrained in us. From a young age, we're taught to seek approval, whether it's from parents, teachers, peers, or society at large. And as adults, this need for validation often manifests in subtle ways: the desire for recognition, the craving for likes and followers, the obsession with proving ourselves to others. But here's the spiritual truth: true fulfillment comes from within. No amount of external validation will ever fill the void if you're not at peace with yourself. And the irony is, the moment you stop seeking validation from others, you begin to find it within. You begin to realize that you are enough, just as you are, without needing anyone else to confirm it for you. So here's a reflective question: what would your life look like if you stopped trying to prove yourself and simply allowed yourself to be? What would change if you gave yourself permission to exist unapologetically, without needing anyone else's approval? Finally, the fifth sign is perhaps the most transformative: you've forgotten the power of presence. In our constant quest for meaning, success, and happiness, we often overlook the most profound truth of all: life is happening right now, not in the future, not in the past, right here, in this very moment. But how often do we truly live in the present? How often do we stop to fully experience the now? Most of us are so busy chasing the next milestone, the next achievement, the next big thing, that we forget to savor the beauty of what's already here. Here's a challenge for you for the next 24 hours. Practice being fully present. When you eat, taste the food. When you eat, taste the food. When you speak to someone, truly listen. When you breathe, feel the air entering your lungs. Notice how this simple shift transforms your experience of life. Because at the end of the day, the greatest wisdom of all is this: life isn't something to be achieved, it's something to be lived. And the more you embrace the present moment, the more you'll realize that everything you've been searching for has been here all along. Take a moment to reflect on what we've uncovered so far. We've explored how philosophies of life and motivation can subtly control our choices, and we've begun to peel back the layers to reveal the deeper truths beneath. But there's so much more to uncover. Have you ever noticed how some decisions feel automatic, as if they're happening before you even think? You might believe you're in control, but there's a subtle pull of force shaping your direction without your conscious permission. That force isn't external. It's your internal philosophy of life and the motivations you've adopted over time, often without realizing it. These are invisible architects, building the framework of your reality. But the question is, are they building something that serves you, or are you living in a structure that no longer fits who you are? Let's break this illusion down further. One of the most insidious ways your philosophy of life controls you is through the stories you tell yourself. These stories are not just casual thoughts, they're scripts. They define what you believe is possible, what you think you deserve, and what you aim for. For example, many people carry the belief that success equals happiness. It's a story so deeply ingrained that it feels like the truth. It drives you to work harder, to sacrifice time, relationships, and even health, all in the name of reaching some idealized version of success. But what happens when you arrive? Does happiness last? Or is it fleeting, replaced by the need for the next achievement? The reality is, when you tie your sense of fulfillment to an external result, you set yourself up for a life of chasing. No finish line will ever be enough because the story you've been following demands constant movement. It tells you you're only as good as your next accomplishment, but is that true? Who benefits from you believing that? And more importantly, what would life feel like if this story wasn't running the show? Another way your philosophy exerts its control is through the rules you think you have to follow. These rules are often unspoken but deeply embedded. They might sound like work hard, and you'll be rewarded, or good things come to those who wait. While these rules can be helpful, they're also limiting when applied rigidly. Life isn't always fair. Hard work doesn't always guarantee success. Sometimes waiting means missing opportunities. The problem isn't the rules themselves, it's the fact that you rarely stop to examine them. They become automatic, like a code running in the background of your mind. But who wrote these rules? Are they yours, or did you inherit them from others? And if they no longer serve you, why are you still following them? Freedom begins when you realize you're allowed to rewrite the rules. You're allowed to question everything you've been taught about what it means to live a good life. And this brings us to another layer of control: the illusion of choice. On the surface, it feels like you're making decisions. You choose your career, your relationships, your daily habits. But are those choices really yours, or are they reactions? Think about how much of what you do is based on what you think you should do. How often do you choose something because it aligns with your deepest values versus choosing it because it's what's expected of you? The truth is, most decisions aren't made in the moment, they're made long before, shaped by your philosophy of life. If you believe that stability is more important than freedom, you'll choose a safe path, even if it doesn't excite you. If you believe that success is more important than balance, you'll sacrifice rest even when you're burning out. These choices feel logical because they align with the philosophy you've been living by. But logic isn't always wisdom. Sometimes it's just a mask for fear. Here's something to consider: if you were completely free from expectations, free from fear, free from the need to prove yourself, how different would your choices look? What would you stop doing? What would you start doing? Most people never ask this because they're too busy living within the boundaries of their current philosophy. But the boundaries are imaginary. They only exist because you believe in them. Now let's look at motivation. It's easy to think of motivation as a good thing. It gets you out of bed, pushes you to work harder, and helps you achieve your goals. But have you ever noticed how exhausting it can be? Motivation often feels like running on a treadmill. You're moving, but are you getting anywhere? The reason for this is simple. Most motivation comes from lack. It comes from the belief that you need to do more, be more, or have more to feel complete. It's not about moving towards something you love, it's about escaping something you fear. But here's the paradox: no matter how much you achieve, the fear doesn't go away. You might silence it temporarily, but it always returns, louder than before. The cycle repeats until you realize that motivation driven by fear is a trap. True motivation doesn't come from fixing what's wrong with you. It comes from realizing there's nothing to fix. You don't need to achieve more to be worthy of love, respect, or happiness. You already are. When you understand this, motivation stops being a struggle. It becomes effortless because it's no longer about proving something. It's about expressing who you already are. And then there's the illusion of control. So much of motivation and philosophy is built around this idea that you can control your life. If you work hard enough, plan well enough, or think positively enough, You can make things go your way. But control is an illusion. You can influence some things, but you can't control outcomes. Life is far too complex for that. Yet, instead of accepting this, most people double down. They try harder. They obsess over the details. They blame themselves when things don't go as planned. But here's the irony: the more you try to control life, the more out of control you feel. True peace doesn't come from controlling everything, it comes from letting go. It comes from realizing that your worth isn't tied to outcomes. You can give your best effort, but the result isn't up to you. And that's okay. Think about how much energy you could save if you stopped trying to control what's uncontrollable. Imagine how much lighter life would feel if you simply allowed things to unfold, trusting that you'll handle whatever comes next. This isn't about giving up, it's about letting go of the need to micromanage every detail of your existence. Finally, let's talk about time. Your philosophy of life controls your relationship with time more than anything else. If you believe that success is the ultimate goal, you'll see time as a resource to be maximized. Every moment becomes a means to an end, a step toward the future. But what happens when you live like this? You stop experiencing life as it happens. You're always looking ahead, chasing the next milestone, the next reward. But here's the thing: life doesn't happen in the future. It happens now. And if you're always focused on what's next, you miss what's here. You miss the beauty of the present moment because you're too busy planning the next one. This is why so many people feel empty even when they achieve their goals. They've spent so much time chasing the future that they've forgotten how to live in the present. So what's the answer? It's not about abandoning your goals or ignoring the future. It's about realizing that the future isn't guaranteed, and the only thing you truly have is this moment. When you live fully in the present, something amazing happens. You stop chasing. You stop striving. You start experiencing. And in that experience, you find a sense of peace that no external achievement could ever give you. We've now uncovered some of the deepest ways your philosophy of life and motivation shape your reality. But there's still one more layer to explore: how to break free from the invisible forces that limit you and create a life that feels truly yours. There's a moment when you start to notice something strange about the way life unfolds. It's not the external circumstances that bother you most, it's the patterns. The same struggles, the same doubts, the same sense of dissatisfaction that creeps in no matter how much you achieve or how far you go. The deeper you look, the more obvious it becomes the issue isn't out there. It's the framework you've been living by. It's the way your internal philosophy and motivations have been shaping your reality, often without your consent. But here's the real question: how do you take back control? How do you stop being a passive participant in your own life and start living in a way that feels aligned, deliberate, and free? The first step is to understand that awareness alone isn't enough. You can recognize the ways your philosophy and motivations are influencing you, but recognition doesn't create change. Change happens when you start disrupting the patterns. One of the most powerful ways to do this is by questioning what you've been avoiding. Most people spend their lives running from discomfort, avoiding difficult emotions, sidestepping tough decisions, distracting themselves from the deeper truths they don't want to face. But the irony is, the things you avoid are often the very things that hold the key to your freedom. Take a moment to think about something you've been putting off. Maybe it's a decision you've been delaying, a conversation you've been dreading, or a feeling you've been trying to bury. Instead of avoiding it, what would happen if you faced it directly? Not with resistance, but with curiosity. What if you stopped seeing discomfort as something to run from and started seeing it as a signal, a sign that something important is waiting to be addressed? Discomfort is not your enemy. It's a doorway. And the more you step through it, the less control it will have over you. Next, consider the stories you've been telling yourself about who you are. Everyone has a narrative about their identity. I'm the responsible one, or I'm not good at that, or I've always been this way. These stories feel true because you've repeated them so often, but they're not facts. They're just interpretations. And as long as you believe them, they'll continue to shape your life. Here's the real challenge. Are you willing to let go of the person you think you are, so you can become the person you're meant to be? This isn't easy. The ego clings to identity because it feels safe, even when that identity is limiting. But safety and growth don't go hand in hand. Growth requires letting go of the old stories, the ones that keep you stuck, and allowing space for something new to emerge. It's not about transforming into someone else, it's about peeling back the layers of conditioning and discovering the truth of who you've always been. Another way to break free is by redefining your relationship with failure. Most people fear failure not because of what it is, but because of what it represents. Failure feels like proof that you're not good enough, not smart enough, not capable enough. And because of this, you avoid it at all costs. You play it safe. You stick to what's comfortable. But here's the truth: failure isn't the opposite of success. It's part of it. Every meaningful accomplishment involves moments of falling short. Every great achievement is built on a foundation of mistakes, missteps, and lessons learned. So instead of fearing failure, what would happen if you embraced it? What if you saw it as feedback rather than something to be ashamed of? When you stop avoiding failure, you stop living so cautiously. You take risks. You try new things. And in the process, you discover that failure isn't nearly as devastating as you thought. It's just a stepping stone, one that leads you closer to the life you want to create. Another critical piece of reclaiming your freedom is learning to separate your worth from your productivity. Society teaches us to measure our value by how much we accomplish, how busy we are, and how efficient we can be. Rest feels like laziness. Slowing down feels like falling behind. But this way of thinking is a trap. Your worth has nothing to do with how much you produce. It's inherent. It's not something you earn, it's something you already have, simply by being alive. When you stop tying your value to your output, everything changes. You stop filling your days with meaningless tasks just to feel productive. You stop working yourself into exhaustion just to prove you're enough. And in the space that's left, you start to reconnect with what truly matters. You realize that life isn't a race to be won, it's an experience to be lived. And sometimes, the most meaningful moments aren't the ones where you're doing, they're the ones where you're simply being. Now let's talk about fear, because it's one of the biggest forces that keeps you stuck. Fear of failure, fear of rejection, fear of uncertainty, they all boil down to the same thing: the fear of losing control. But here's the paradox. The more you try to control life, the more fearful you become. You can't control how people perceive you. You can't control the outcomes of your efforts. You can't control the future. And the harder you try, the more anxious and frustrated you'll feel. The way forward isn't through control, it's through trust. Trust doesn't mean everything will go the way you want. It means you'll be okay even when it doesn't. It means you can handle whatever comes, not because you've planned for it, but because you're resilient. Trust doesn't make life easier, but it makes it lighter. It allows you to stop grasping so tightly and start moving through the world with a sense of openness and ease. And finally, there's the importance of alignment. When your actions are out of alignment with your values, life feels heavy. You feel disconnected, drained, and unfulfilled, even if everything looks fine on the surface. Alignment isn't about perfection, it's about consistency. It's about making choices that reflect what truly matters to you, instead of what's convenient or expected. To live in alignment, you first need clarity. What do you value most? Not what you think you should value, but what actually feels meaningful to you. When you know this, you can start making decisions that reflect those values. You can start saying no to the things that pull you away from them, and yes to the things that bring you closer. And when your actions align with your values, life doesn't just feel lighter, it feels alive. Every step you take feels purposeful, because you're no longer moving in a direction someone else chose for you. You're moving in the direction that feels right for you.